the truth is that you do. Everybody's version of full-time or what you want out of your business is different.
Yeah.
If you just want your business to bring in $10,000 a year so you can go on a few nice vacations with your family, that's fine. If you want your business to bring in six figures and be a sole income for your family, that's fine too. And so with me, I had to figure out, well, what do I want my business to do for my family?
Right.
And as long as it's meeting that, that's
You're
enough.
covered.
That's enough.
Oh my goodness, Jana, welcome to the Makers Gonna Learn Unfiltered podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. This is awesome.
Jana, when I was thinking of all my local friends that I knew that had to be on the show, I was like, I need to have Jana on because everyone who listens to the podcast needs to hear all of your wisdom for business, for self-employment, the entrepreneurship journey. So take it away. Introduce yourself. Let everyone know how you describe yourself and see yourself here.
All right. So I'm Jana. I'm a wedding photographer, primarily weddings. I do families, newborns, stuff like that. Based right outside of Knoxville, primarily serving that area. I just turned 30, so that's how I would describe myself now. I've been a 20-something for a while, but 30. I have a husband, Jordan, who I met at a wedding while shooting.
It's crazy.
Yeah, super wild story there. And we have triplet daughters who just turned 14 months old. And so, yeah, I'm a mom, a wife, a wedding photographer, self-employed, all that fun stuff.
Somehow, you do it all.
Somehow. Some days it's a little harder than others, but yeah, try and manage the whole thing.
It's incredible. Now, fun fact, I've quite a few stories about Jana.
Number
one, my favorite story was that we got connected for shooting my wedding.
Yes, yeah.
From one of my best friends. And he was like, you just have to use Jana. Like, dude, you'll have to use her. And I remember driving to our engagement shoot. And I literally told Courtney, I was like, I'm so glad we're having this engagement shoot because if she makes me look fat, I have time to find someone else.
Exactly.
I just remember that. I just remember that. And then we all hit it off and we all fell in love with Jana. Courtney, me, I mean, we just instantly, I remember leaving.
We had the best time.
We had the best time. And I'm sure you have to say that with all your clients.
Oh, no. I mean, there are definitely, I've loved every client I've worked with, but there's some that I definitely connect on a deeper level with that we still talk after the fact, after the wedding's over, all of that stuff. So, yeah, no, I remember leaving that shoot and I was like, we had a good time. We're going to have a good time at the wedding.
We had a really good time. And then we were shooting for personal, just personal family photos, and you were pregnant with triplets.
Yes.
And we were like, oh, we always wanted twins. And then come to find out, y'all, my foster babies.
It's the weirdest thing.
This is so strange.
Yeah.
My foster babies and your babies were born on the same day.
Yeah, and in the same NICU.
The same hospital, the same little NICU. They spent their 30 days in the
so
NICU.
Weird. Well, you texted me. Our girls had been home, I feel like, a couple of days. And you were texting me and you were like, so, and just a photo. And I was like, wait, when were they born? And you told me, and I told my husband, and I was like, am I dreaming? We were on the newborn, no sleep thing. So I was like, I've made this up in my head. Yeah. And it was just the weirdest, craziest thing. It's multiples bizarre. Anyways, but then all of the similarities, Yeah.
So me and Jana talk very often about all 5 of our crazy kiddos.
All 5 that we just all of a sudden had from one day to the next. I sent Tanner a video last night of one of ours walking, taking her first steps last night. So it's hard. Yeah. They're growing up so fast.
But when you sent me the video, I had just literally taken my second twin. I don't say my baby's names on camera. But the second one, he had made me walk him around the house the most he had ever. I mean, we were doing circles around the island, circles around the dining room, around the kitchen.
He's ready.
He's like, I need to go. And they do physical therapy at the house, and the PT is bring the arms down as much as possible and let them get comfortable with the weight and stuff. And he the lower you go, he's
yeah.
And then the other baby, he's cool walking with one hand. So we'll put something in his one hand and like let him walk with the other one down low. I'm like, dude, just go walk.
I know.
Like,
and it feels so weird because especially I feel like it's a thing with multiples, time goes by even faster.
Yes.
So it feels like we just like brought them home from the hospital and then now one of them is like walking and taking it's so weird. It's so strange. But yeah.
This is my first like time because we went from 2 to 4 in our house, and obviously like childcare with 4, like what? Like you can never ask one person to watch 4 kids, number one. So this is the first time, you know, our 2 older kiddos went home in December, and like this is the first time we have stable support. And like, I don't know, I feel like I'm like more of a person.
Yes.
Like I can have something other than like worrying about the kids all the time. Like me and Courtney kayaked last week, and everybody was like, "Where's your babies?" I was like, "They were actually at the park."
Exactly.
Like how about that? That's awesome.
When ours were really little, it was really hard. Even if we had help, and we have tons of help in our home with our immediate family, but still, there's just it's especially when you have preemies and, you know, health issues or whatever, it's like scary to leave them. But the older they get, the more you can like have your own life and you're not as worried about them. And I feel like I'm like coming back to myself.
Yes.
The way I was pre-pregnancy. Yes,
it's a journey. Now, I don't know if I've downplayed it, but like Jana's the best wedding photographer around. Like,
well, thank you. You have to say that because I took your wedding photos.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've also looked around for others.
Okay.
Like I've looked around, and Jana's the best.
Well,
now, so how long have you been shooting weddings?
So I've been shooting period for 10 years now. I just hit 10 years in December.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I took my first wedding about a year into shooting. It was a girl I'd gone to high school with. I still shoot their family photos. And they were just having like a little backyard wedding. I was like, I've never done a wedding. And she was like, well, I don't even know that this counts as a wedding, but please, we'd love to have you come. I think I did it for like, I was there maybe 2 hours for like $75, something like that. It was crazy.
What a steal.
And that just dipped my toe into it. I did that for a couple of years, just like people I knew who were having really small weddings. And then it just kind of snowballed, got bigger and bigger. I graduated from college in 2017, and then I only worked outside of, like, after college, I worked in my full-time job for a year before I quit and went full-time.
No way.
So,
now, was that the plan?
So while I was in school, at some point during school, I was like, I know at this point that this is what I want to do full-time someday when I can build it that big. I just didn't know how long that would take. But I still wanted to finish school. Just to say I'd done it.
Just to say you did it.
I guess.
You're a finisher.
Yeah.
I love it.
And so it was the plan eventually. But yeah, the first few years that I did it, it was definitely on the side. Like I had a 9 to 5 in school, and then it was my 5 to 9.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
you know, it took a little while. But then, yeah, 2018, I went completely full time and never looked back.
Now, a lot of people that listen to this podcast like are in a 9 to 5 and they're like wanting to explore what it's like to have a side hustle and like the possibility of that being a successful side hustle or being successful enough to work for themselves. Like being a creative period, I think there's so much that each of us can learn from each other. So one of the main things that I wanted to bring you on and like talk about was that like relationship of how did you start to transition to work for yourself? Because like that's, I mean, I say it's scary for me, but to be honest, I've never had a real job. Like I never had the opportunity to work for someone else. And I tell people a lot of times like, man, if a craft company would have like took me under their wing and like gave me enough stable work, like I'd have probably like just been like on like working away, doing marketing, doing whatever's needed, spokesperson, whatever. But nobody ever gave me the opportunity. so I had to build my
own. Did it on your own. Yeah.
So how did it feel from you? Like, I mean, you had your degree, you probably had a career path. What was your degree in?
Business.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, and that was like my third major change. I had initially gone for elementary education. A family member of mine that's a teacher was like, I don't know that I would get into teaching right now. I changed a couple of times, ended with business. And at the point that I changed to business, I'd already decided like my eventual thing will be a full-time wedding photographer. And people ask me too, does my business degree help? Absolutely not. Like one class was in accounting and it helps me a little bit. Other than that, no. But so the transition, I got to a point with, I had a day job. I finished school, I had a day job, and I was doing weddings, families, seniors, stuff like that. And I got to a point where I could not grow my business anymore because of the time that I had to give to my full-time job.
Right.
And so I kind of maxed out there. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to keep doing this amount that I'm doing with my full-time job, but continually raise my prices, which always go up in the wedding industry anyway. And I got to a point where with my 5 to 9, my wedding photography business, I was making more than my salary job. And that's when I knew I could go ahead and take the leap.
Yeah.
Because one, I couldn't work any more weddings at that point. So
there's
I was
only
kind
so
of
many
stuck
weekends.
there.
There's only so many Friday nights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I couldn't take on any more there. And then I was at the point where I was like, I can pay myself what my day job is paying me. And I enjoyed the people I worked with, but I wasn't super happy there. That wasn't my career path.
Right.
And so I just decided I was going to take the leap. I had initially said I was going to wait until the start of 2019. And then in the fall of 2018, I was like, you know what?
Go.
I just got to go. I got to do it. If I'm not going to do it now, I'm never going to do it. And that was what it took to have more time to be able to make this my 9 to 5, in which case it started growing and growing and growing a lot faster, which showed that what I needed was the time to dedicate to it.
Right. Now, I feel like I personally think, like, from the way you show up on social, like, I feel like you have your time, like, managed very well.
Thank you. I try.
I don't know if you would agree with that. Like, how has it been? You know, I talk to a lot of people about, like, working for themselves and, like, the struggle. Like, for me, my biggest hurdle when I got started, especially even when I had the work, like, the type of work I did before Maker's Gonna Learn was contract work. So you have a contract and you hit your deadlines, period. Like, you get paid.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
You don't have to do these certain hours or anything
No certain
like that.
hours or anything. So my biggest struggle going self-employed and, like, having work, which was a blessing, was the motivation to get up as a creative. Like, nobody's gonna know if I'm sleeping till 10 o'clock in the morning. Like, nobody's gonna know.
Anything.
That was my biggest hurdle to overcome, to be like, hey, actually, I function so much better if I'm up by 6:30 or 6:45. And I actually love to move my body before I work. So I get something, like, super hard over with. How was it for you going in? Like, did you have a mentor? Did you have someone that, like, guided you? Like, what was it?
That would have been great. I feel like I would have gotten where I am now so much faster. A big part of it, so when I went full-time, I was engaged to my now husband. And so we didn't live together before marriage or anything like that. So I went full-time, we were engaged, but I was still, like, we were living separately. So he had his day job.
Right.
I was doing my thing. It didn't hurt if I slept in. And I was like, I don't have a 9 to 5 anymore. I'm going to sleep in. And I'm a night owl. So then I'll edit till 3 in the morning. That'll be fine.
No way.
Yes. And so not every day, but sometimes I did that. And I didn't have, a spouse or anything like that to try and...
You didn't have babies waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning.
So initially, I didn't have as much structure. And I realized that I was working more hours than I needed to. Like, stuff that I could finish in probably a 6-hour workday. I was doing a 10-hour workday, but I would get distracted and I would take more breaks or this or that. And when we got married, we moved in together. And I suddenly realized, like, when he's going to bed at night, I would kind of like to go too. I don't really want to edit till 3 in the morning.
That's a new
and
thought.
Then sleep. Yeah, this is odd. I want to spend time with my husband. So weird. And so that's when I was like, okay, I need to have more structure to this. And it limited somewhat the amount of time I was working. Because when we got married, my husband was like, I feel like you're a workaholic. Because I could be in my office 12 hours.
Working a lot.
And it didn't.
But you produced like 5 hours of work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I put more structure to it then. And I was still, when we got married, I was still trying to build my business to get it to where it would be at the point where it is now so that I could slow down with having kids. Yeah. So I was in, I hate like this term, but I was in like that hustle phase when we first got married of working really hard, over 40 weddings a year, which isn't sustainable long term, but trying to build something. But I noticed that as I put... Boundaries don't limit your life. They add to your life. And a lot of the times people don't want to put boundaries around their work and around their schedules because they think, well, it's going to take away or I can't get as much done. There's been so many studies that show if you give two people the same task with two different amounts of time, like this person 8 hours and this person 4 hours, they'll both get it done in the amount of time they were allotted.
Yeah.
So if you set some restrictions for yourself, you'll still get your work done. And if you don't, you are probably working too much.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So when it comes to, I really am so excited to talk to you about boundaries. And I am a big fan of boundaries because similar to you, I actually create better when I have the boundaries. Yeah. And I think for people that are listening that don't have boundaries, that are working 12-hour days, and I get it. Like there are people, previous versions of myself would say, Tanner, I am working from the time I get up to the time I go to bed. But you're not.
Exactly.
Like you're not.
Convince
you
yourself
are,
that you are,
but you're not.
Yeah.
That is a big part. Is like realizing, like, oh, like I had to take a break. Oh, I had to do like that's not real work output. But for me, my question is, and maybe I can give my thoughts too. But how did you, when you added the boundaries? For me, adding the boundaries, like, really was stepping back from the hustle culture, right? Like, and everyone has a hustle phase. Like,
right, absolutely.
There's ebbs and flows of business, right? Like, you know, when you're hustling and like scaling, that there's for an end in mind, which I think can be a part of boundaries, right? But then there comes a place that you have to be confident enough in your business, in my opinion, to like step away to like live your life. Yeah. Did you have resistance there?
I had a fear of the comparison game is huge in the wedding industry because I think something a lot of people don't realize about the wedding industry is the wedding market is a luxury market. Getting married is not a luxury. That's
having
not that
a $50,000
wedding. Having a wedding is a
Yeah.
luxury. And so when you're comparing yourself to photographers on Instagram, there are photographers I follow from like LA that charge $20,000.
Yeah.
I can't compare myself to that. I don't even live in that market.
Right.
But that happens to all of us in this industry, in a lot of industries. And so it did initially. I would think, well, if I step back, if I slow down, like it can be such a thing for you to see another photographer, like they're shooting 40 plus weddings a year, 50 plus weddings a year. You see that number and you don't just see dollar signs, but you see like, man, that many couples wanted them.
Yeah.
And so when I was like, I'm going to slow down. Part of that is raising your prices to compensate.
Yes.
But when you decide to take less, it can feel a little scary initially because you think, am I full-time? Do I count as being as successful as those who are doing that many? And the truth is that you do. Everybody's version of full-time or what you want out of your business is different.
Yeah.
If you just want your business to bring in $10,000 a year so you can go on a few nice vacations with your family, that's fine. If you want your business to bring in six figures and be a sole income for your family, that's fine too. And so with me, I had to figure out, well, what do I want my business to do for my family?
Right.
And as long as it's meeting that, that's enough.
Covered.
That's enough. I can't compare myself to the people who don't have kids, who are shooting 50 weddings a year, who live in a market I don't live in, and they're making significantly more money than me.
And I think a big part, you know, when you talk about different markets, like California, you're paying 13% on top of like federal income tax. Like you're paying that on state income tax. Yeah. So like you naturally have to charge more.
Exactly.
Like for everyone watching, like Tennessee, like the reason why everyone's moving here, there's no state income tax.
Right.
Our homes are going up in value every day.
Yes.
But they're still very affordable.
Yeah.
Like they're still very affordable compared to other markets. And I think like there's so many like more things at play. Now, a lot of the people I get to work with inside of my coaching program in our circle, one of their favorite things to talk to me about is like there's too much competition.
Yeah.
And I feel like the wedding industry, you did already mentioned it's a luxury market. I feel like it's a very like you know people in the market. Like you know other photographers, you know other vendors. So how did you overcome like, oh my gosh, there's other photographers out there that may be better than me, but there's still room for me.
Right.
Like how did that conversation for you like go?
Well, I feel like so in my industry as well as any creative industry, every individual business and every individual person, there's art involved in that, and no two of those are the same. It can't be. That's just impossible in a creative industry. So that's one thing, is reminding myself that even if there are this many others, no one is doing exactly what I'm doing and producing exactly what I'm producing, because I am the photographer. I am the one editing. And unless you have my brain, then you're not going to do the same thing. And I'm not going to do the same thing as somebody else. So reminding myself of that there are going to be people who my work is the one that's going to stand out to them. They're going to want to work with me, whether it's they like my shooting style, my editing style, my personality. All of that should come into play when choosing a wedding photographer. And then two, honestly, I have over time had to unfollow a lot of photographers on social media. That just,
I love it.
I follow photographers who either are like great friends of mine who I love. I send referrals to them. I love seeing their work, seeing them succeed. Or photographers who inspire me. I love to follow that. If I'm following somebody in my industry that makes me feel icky to look at their stuff, just because it brings out that jealousy. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And if I'm comparing myself to them, that's either, if I know them, I'll just mute them because I'm not going to start drama by unfollowing.
That's
but
funny.
If I don't know them, just hit the unfollow button. And you have to remind yourself that there is enough room. There is space for everybody here.
Yes.
It does not bother me when other photographers are coming into the market. If anything, it's just like, this is such a fun industry. Being a creative is so fun. Welcome other people. It should always be community instead of competition.
Yeah.
And just knowing there's room for you and there's space for you, and there's always going to be somebody that wants what you are offering.
Yes.
So
I think for me, like, because we have a lot of I say competition. There's really not that much competition, in my opinion, for the amount of people that own a Cricut machine.
Yeah.
Like, there's millions of people who
Right.
own a Cricut machine.
Yeah.
There's like, I don't know, a handful of creatives that like really own the Cricut niche, right? So what I've done, anytime that I get in like this like competitive like comparison game, I like take them out of the equation and I focus all on my product. I focus on my product and I ask myself the few questions of like, how could I make this better? Like, oh, I'm playing really small in like my production. Like, let's make a better production. Like, oh, I need to offer more. Let's offer more. Like, you know, I've used that to like flip the coin and like just focus in on my packages and like my offers and to truly make it better.
Right.
Because if I have that, you know, some of it is like, okay, Tanner, like, you just need to focus on your customers and like serve them better. And sometimes like it really has helped me to like pivot and just change what I offer, which has been very fascinating for me in this world of like the comparison, that game that has been really fun to navigate as we've even grew. Is like, I would say we're probably one of the top 3 like Cricut educators, like online, like whatever that means, like whatever that means, you know, it's very funny. So it's been neat. But within the wedding industry, do you ever find yourself like really stumped on deciding how to price yourself, like in the past? Because a lot of our audience are here and they're like, Tanner, how do I see someone charging like $15 for a t-shirt. Like, how in the world could I charge $25?
Yeah.
Like, and of course we teach them like how we price and do all of it. But at the end of the day, like, the cool part about being a business owner is you get to decide.
Exactly.
And that's the scary part for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, especially when you're thinking about money and paying bills, and it's not just like, it's not monopoly money.
No,
you're using
real
this
deal.
for real life. We all have a mortgage and we all have an electric bill.
Yeah.
A lot of us have kids we have to feed. So,
and childcare to pay for.
Exactly. So it's one of those things. With the wedding industry, there is such a large range, and a lot of people coming in and trying to dip their toes into it who aren't necessarily like professional wedding photographers, but they're hoping they can be someday, charge a very small amount to get in. So there's that end of the spectrum. And then there's the luxury market where there are wedding photographers who charge $50,000, if not more, celebrity wedding photographers, all this stuff.
Wow.
So obviously, I'm not a celebrity wedding photographer.
You are for me.
For you.
You're
a celebrity.
No,
so you do somewhat look at your market, but at the same time, if you do that too much, you're going to compare and think, well, am I valuable enough for this? One, if somebody wants to hire you, you're either in their budget or you're not. But if somebody really wants to work with you and finds you and you're in their budget, they'll pay that amount if they value what you are offering. two, you have to think about what your actual expenses are. So you can't say, well, this photographer, they're only charging $2,000 and I feel like they're working more, so I'm going to lower down to $2,000 because I'm too scared to go up higher than that. Well, what if you are more valuable than $2,000? And that's not saying anything about that other photographer.
Sure.
It's just what you are offering is more, but you also might have more expenses. Maybe they don't have kids. Maybe they can charge less because they don't have more bills to pay.
Right.
So you have to figure out, that's where you have to take the comparison out of it in the wedding industry and think, what do I need? What do I have to do to run this business? But also then you can look and say, what value am I providing? And you'll get to a point where sometimes you'll have your prices set at a certain point. There's like a dead zone in wedding photography where you're like not expensive enough and also not cheap enough. And so people will see your prices and they're like, I can't, like, that seems too good to be true. Like, they're better than that, but my budget's a little higher than that, so I'm going to go with somebody else because it almost feels like scammy.
Right.
So you have to just kind of play with it and wiggle around but know, first and foremost, what do I have to cover in my business, with my salary being the first thing.
Profit.
Exactly. You can't think, well, I have to make sure that I have like this camera paid for and stuff. No.
Yeah.
And before you think about upgrading your gear, think about paying your bills.
Yes.
Think about your salary. Profit first, always.
Yes.
And then two, what value are you providing and what is that worth? And it takes a little bit of wiggle room, but you always don't ever undersell yourself.
Yeah.
Think about what you are actually bringing to the table in any creative industry. And if people want what you are selling, they'll pay that amount.
They'll have to.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Like the line in the sand. Like this is the process, the price.
Exactly.
I think for you, like two things that I always like think about is, you know, as I have went through like getting married and I have quite a few friends that have gotten married and like I've talked to them about vendors and things like that. Like, you know, a lot of times like you have a second shooter.
Yeah.
So like you have to expend, like that's an expense, like, but it's part of your value add is like having that second person for two, like coverage, right? Like that's huge, but again, it's more expensive and some people don't see it. But I think like one thing I just continually tell people, like when I'm referring them to you of like, your art is like, obviously your editing is like so us, right? Like all of that is so good, but what's not accounted for that is like 10 times more valuable is like how confident you make people feel behind, like in front of the camera.
Right.
Like that is the skill set that I think like as any creative gets like really experienced in their market, we could say the same thing on graphic designers. You could say the same thing on Etsy sellers. Like as you get more experience, you have a more skill set to do it better, faster. You've worked with more people, period. Therefore, you have a larger, you know, mindset of what can I do to make these people better?
Right, exactly.
Which is like, like I wish more people would know, like as they grow, as they develop, they naturally can charge more.
Right.
Because they're doing it quicker, they're doing it better.
A huge part of what my clients are paying for is my experience and my expertise. And that's why when I first started 10 years ago and I was doing family sessions for friends, they were like $20 for an hour of my time. Because I was very open with people. I didn't know what I was doing, and I was trying to figure that out. You were kind of taking your chance on me, whether you would like your pictures or not. 10 years later, I know what I'm doing. I've done this for 10 years. I've been full-time since 2018. This is my full-time job. I'm very educated on the wedding industry, photography in general, posing, all of that stuff. So a huge part of what you are paying me for is my experience. And so the more experience I have, the more I can charge, because as the time gets bigger, so does the amount of money that I am worth in that.
Has anyone ever came to you and be like, "What? Like, how does this hourly rate equate?" Like, has anyone ever done that to you? I'm just curious.
No, not really. I had an inquiry a while back where I sent my packages and a couple responded and they were like, "You aren't in our budget, but we would love to see what you can do for us if we can get on the phone with you, but we can't afford you." Like they laid that out very plainly in an email. And I just very kindly explained, like, I can't lower my packages for you. That's not fair to any of the other couples that have paid me the same thing. And I totally understand if I'm not in somebody's budget. Like I said, the wedding market is a luxury market. So it is expensive to hire your wedding vendors. But I've always just been pretty hard line in the sand with, there are a lot of photographers. If I'm not in your budget, I know you can find somebody that is. I have a list of photographers I send out as recommendations that are for a variety of budgets.
And has this been from the get-go? Have you always, like, would there have been a past Jana that would have gone on the phone and be like, okay, what can you do?
Yes, I'm sure. Probably before I went full-time, I was a little more... and it wasn't really like I would lower the cost. It would just be more like, well, I'll take out this or I'll take out that. Like, okay, so you want me there for 8 hours, but you don't want the second shooter and you want to see how much time that'll take out. Okay, I'll do it. And now I've done this long enough to know I cannot do an 8-hour wedding without a second shooter. So I'm not taking that out. And I also know that I get enough inquiries and I get enough work. I'm not needing to like beg. I don't need to beg anybody to hire me. I don't want that.
How far out are you booked?
So I only book up to like right now I'm booking into 2024, but I'm not into 2025 just because like that seems like forever
you don't
away
know.
From,
you don't know what's happening in 2025.
I don't know what's happening in 2025. I don't want to book stuff then.
Oh my gosh.
So I don't say that to be conceited or anything like that, but I've gotten to a point, I wasn't always this way, but I'm established enough now that if you can't afford me, I completely understand. I don't judge you at all for that. Here's some photographers who have lower price points. You will love working with them. We just can't work together because that's doing a disservice to myself to undervalue myself. But also that's not fair to my clients who have said, sure, absolutely, where do we sign?
Made it work for these budgets or these packages and things. So how did previous Jana like get to the confidence to have that? Because I assume, in my experience, like I've had to kind of like just bet on me.
Yeah.
Like before all the inquiries came, like, okay, like the cadence has been good, like the workload's been good, but you know, it's always that first time that you really enforce that boundary and that you trust the process, right?
Yeah.
Like, did that happen for you? Do you remember when you went full time that you're like, this is how my business has to be?
When I went full time, I got and when I went full time is when I started having. I think my first full time year, I had maybe like 25 weddings, which is about my number now.
Cool.
I've gone. It's funny. Like you get to a point where you're taking a lot, and then the goal is to take less and less and less. So I'm back at that number now. I'm not doing more than 40 a year anymore.
Yeah.
But when I got to that point, and then I was like, I am gonna have to set some parameters on, you know, how much time I have off. I have a spouse. I didn't have kids at the time, but I was married. I like to spend time with my family. I like to spend time with my friends. I like to sleep in on the occasional Saturday morning. Can't do that now, but at the time. And so I did get to the point where my first way I feel like of setting boundaries was if somebody inquired with me and I knew we weren't a good fit and realizing I needed to turn that away because it wasn't I couldn't serve them the way they needed to be served. And it would be a disservice to me to take it.
Yeah, your intake form is intense.
It's pretty extensive because and I've had people that fill it out and then at the bottom where it's like, tell me about your wedding day. I'd love to hear about your story. And they write like not applicable. And I'm like, okay, we're not going to work well together because I want to be like your friend on your wedding day. And if you're not excited to tell me, I don't need a whole, essay, but tell me about your day, please.
Yeah, that intake form scared Courtney to death.
Yeah.
She was like, we got to sit down and we got to do this.
Yeah.
But it was intense, but it set that you were like so serious.
Yeah.
Like we had a Zoom call
right.
to go over a wedding.
Exactly.
Photos. Like,
well, it's because this is, and I don't feel like your wedding day is the biggest day of your life. You know, you're going to have so many big days of your life. And we have kids now. And the fact that we had children, that's bigger than a wedding day.
Sure.
But it's such an important event, and you're going to spend more time with me than any other vendor, usually more time with me on your wedding day than your own spouse. So we need to like each other. And so my first boundary was like, I had always just been like, you want to book me for this? Yes, absolutely. And then realizing, okay, I need to get some structure in my business to not overwork myself and to avoid burnout. I can't take things that I know there would be a better fit for that client elsewhere, and also there would be a better client out there for me. And that's not that it's a bad client or anything like that.
But the confidence.
Exactly.
Can we all just like imagine the confidence that we could turn away a customer and know that another customer will come.
Well, there's always going to be another customer, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. There's always going to be another customer. There's not a drought of people getting married. There's not a drought of people, like you were saying earlier, wanting to buy a T-shirt. If you're selling T-shirts, there will be somebody. And yes, it's super scary to turn away people, but getting the confidence of what you have built, what you are worth, what you can provide to other people, and knowing if they are a perfect fit and reach out to me and we work together, it's going to be magical for both ends. Then holding on to that and not doing yourself or your client or your customer a disservice of giving them something that isn't what they wanted, or you didn't serve them the way you should have, and then taking something into your business that makes you feel burnt out or doesn't serve you either.
I had a friend who does service work, and I told her, I was like, you know what? If you're just not feeling the relationship with the client, you should probably just like send them somewhere else.
Yeah.
And she started doing it, and she's like, this is so much better.
Yeah.
Because when you're taking business from someone that's just not, first of all, ever gonna be happy.
Yeah.
So like when you have these thoughts and like your gut's telling you, like you probably, this isn't the right fit, you need to lean into it more and more, because then you're going to weed out anyone that's not the right fit.
Exactly.
Because Jana, you know as well as I know, like if you're not meshing, like you're not going to be able to show up as your best self.
Right.
Do you want to hear a funny story?
Yes,
So
always.
I used to work for a paint company.
Okay.
And me and Courtney landed this amazing gig, like doing social media for a paint company. We were like 15, 16 years old, like it was a 6-figure contract. It was crazy.
That's
It was amazing. The Lord really provided. And in the beginning, it was awesome. But the marketing team didn't know that the CEO had like signed off on this. So they dropped off these two 16-year-olds to the marketing department one day. Literally. They're like, have fun.
Yeah.
See y'all in a year. So I ended up with a really terrible manager that just didn't enjoy, like, it didn't understand my value. And like, obviously we didn't understand each other's value.
Yeah.
And that was when I decided, like, I can't do this work anymore. Like, I can't do this service-based work with companies that, like, just are not, their teams are not the right fit. And in general, I was like, I need to provide for myself. And I was like, the way to do that is work directly for the people I know I need to reach anyway.
Yeah.
Like, what if I just worked for them? Like, I thought I had to work for, a company to then teach and like stay in their parameters, which ended up like limiting me so much.
For sure.
In every company I had worked with. So that's why I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to work directly for the consumer so that I don't have to work with people that I'm just not like the right fit for.
Well, and that company would have been a perfect fit for somebody else.
Yeah.
And somebody else would have come in and made that marketing team so excited. It's not you and it's not the company. It's that you have to find the perfect fit. And that's in any creative industry.
Yes.
Because that's the thing about being creative is you're going to be somebody's vibe and you're not going to be somebody else's.
Yeah.
So there are wedding photographers whose styles I just really don't like as a personal preference. And yet they're always booked because they have clients who love that.
I love that style.
Seek that
and you're
out.
like, wow.
Exactly.
Isn't that so cool?
Exactly.
There's
That's
room
the
for
awesome
everybody.
thing. Exactly. There's room for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. So I feel like you have a lot of boundaries. Do you have any boundaries that you would like to share for anyone that's like, I need a boundary in my life and business?
So first of all, I'll say boundaries ebb and flow. And one of the things you have to remember is you have to give yourself grace because there are times where there is something going on in my business or in my life that my boundary is going to have to change a little bit that week, and that's okay. Right. As long as you're setting up boundaries in a healthy way, and like I said, they don't take away from your life and business, they add to it, but we have to give ourselves grace, first of all. So remember that when you're setting boundaries. But a thing that we talked about, we kind of made a list of boundaries for before we had kids.
So you and your husband?
Yes, me and my husband. Because I am my business.
Yeah.
I have contractors like second shooters, stuff like that. I don't have any employees. So this is me. I am this business. So he is a huge part of that.
So do you encourage, let's just pause here because I think this is fascinating. So I work with my spouse, so it's very different. Like she is on the team.
Right.
For people that do not work with their spouse, but are self-employed and are like, I mean, let's get real. Like, whether you have we have a team of full-time employees, but I still, at the end of the day, am responsible for them and the entire business.
Right.
So, like, this is our baby.
Yeah.
So if you're not working with your spouse, do you encourage people to still like bring them in on the vision, on the boundaries?
I do. So a certain point, my husband literally like could not tell you how much my business brings in a year. Like, I'm sure he has no idea. But when it comes to things that will affect your personal life and him, absolutely. Yes. He comes in my home office maybe once a month, and we kind of chat about my schedule and how things are going. And my first priority in life is my faith. My second priority in that is my household, my husband and my kids. And if my business is worth nothing to me if my home life stinks.
Yeah.
And my marriage is suffering from it. I will give up my business in a day.
Praise God.
For my marriage. Like, my marriage is first and foremost. So he does come in and we talk about things like that. And so when I do suggest that, because especially if you are the business and you are an entrepreneur, your spouse is your teammate, even if they have nothing to do with my business. My husband's name is not on a single document, a single bank account to do with my business, nothing, but he is my partner. My dad had a brick and mortar business. He was self-employed for his whole adult life. He passed away a few years ago, but my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but she was involved in that and involved in discussions with that, even though it wasn't her thing. So I do think you should bring them in on that to answer that question. But before we had kids, we were trying to have kids, and we talked about when we have kids, stuff is going to have to change a little bit, and what are those boundaries that we would like to do? So one was always having one weekend off per month with no weddings, no nothing. And two, I don't do Sundays. I used to do Sundays. I don't do Sundays anymore. That was hard. There have been some inquiries for this year and next year that I'm like, Lord, this almost feels like a fake inquiry you're sending me to test me, that are like my dream couples. They're like, we don't even need to see the prices. We're ready to book you, but it's a Sunday. And that's a commitment I made to my husband and to our children who have no idea what that is. But it's
what does mommy do?
Yeah, exactly.
Mommy plays with us.
Exactly. But that's one of the things that I committed to. And the way, too, what's crazy is when you set these boundaries to prioritize your family, the way God has blessed us in that is just insane.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the wedding industry and most weddings are on the weekends, there's 2 days in a weekend. I've cut out one of them completely. So that was scary. So those two. And then the biggest thing is office hours. So I have an autoresponder on my email if I'm out of office. I have 9 to 5 office hours. I'm in my office at home usually 9 to noon and then like 1 to 4:30. But I don't answer. If you text me at 10 p.m., not answering it till the next day. And that's not to be rude or anything like that. It's just I have to set those boundaries. And I used to not do that. I used to be more available kind of anytime. And because I felt like, oh my gosh, are people going to like fire me if I don't answer
back? Are they going to question like why I'm not like responding to them in 20 minutes?
Exactly. So office hours, having a weekend off per month, and no Sundays are the biggest things. Yeah.
And was this recent?
So those were the ones, the office hours I've kind of always done since we've been married. I used to not be good about that, but once we got married, I was good about that. And then the no Sundays and the 1 weekend off per month were when I got pregnant, I started implementing that. I didn't I had Sunday weddings coming up. I didn't cancel them or anything. I just didn't take anything in addition to that.
It's very interesting. So here I work some weekends, like some weekends we, a lot of our consumers, like our customers, they're working. So they have real jobs. Like, so the weekend is their like enjoyment. So if we want to have like a big virtual event or things like that, like we know we want to show up in that way. So we ask our team to work some weekends, and I worked this past weekend, and whatnot, which is fine. But I think it's very like hard to decide like where that is in your business because you see the potential, you see how much you could do if you are willing to show up and go the extra mile, right? Like, but it's like, okay, if I'm doing this weekend, like what are we gonna do instead? Like I got to spend a whole week with my babies in Puerto Rico and like take them to the pool every day. Like it was beautiful. Like to work a weekend, for that is like fine. But
exactly.
It's like you said, like the ebbs and the flows and like the knowing that when you put your family in that first area and that, before the business, how it shifts.
Yeah, completely.
Shifts priority. It shifts goals.
Yeah.
How has it been for you, like switching into, from pregnancy to obviously when you had 3
Yes.
show up, like, it's like, how do you just not have to walk away, right? Like, how do you still make time? Because like for me, like my whole goals and like everything is like, you know what, like it has to go through like the stress check. Like,
yes.
am I gonna be like, am I gonna still be able to show up for my babies?
Right.
Like, is that...
And that's different than before you have kids.
Like, Courtney, you know what? Courtney self-sustaining.
She can take care of herself.
She's taking care of herself. I can give my all to my business
Right.
and to our business for our future. And, if I need it to be checked out, she's got it. Like, she's self-sustaining. But then you get these babies and they're like just, constant dependence, right? Like, they need it. It's been wild to see my thoughts, to see like my priorities shift. And similar to you, like I can't respond to... One of my favorite boundaries is I don't check my email every day. That's huge for me. Obviously, I am not the only person answering and serving customers. Our customer care is available 7 days a week.
Yes.
But for my personal email, like work, and I got to remove email off my phone completely. Like those are some of my favorite boundaries that have helped me be
That's awesome.
the best I can be. But yeah, how has it been for you since having kids and your like ambition, like your work? Like what is it? Has it shifted? Has it not?
It's completely shifted. Before, so like I said, I had a stay-at-home mom, and I loved having a stay-at-home mom. But my dad owned his own business, and when I was growing up, there were so many amazing things that I had in my life growing up because I had both of those things. And when
was your mom picking you up from school every day?
Yes, I never rode the bus. I never rode the bus.
My
What
gosh,
a luxury!
that
I know.
was I didn't have. I had the luxury here and there. Thank you to my mama and papa. But yeah, that was a luxury.
Yes,
especially if your mom was driving a minivan.
And I did not realize that until I was older. Like, oh my gosh, like that was a luxury. But we were not like wealthy by any means, but because my dad's business was successful, my mom was able to stay at home. But when I think back to growing up, I don't think about, like, my parents did pay for my education, and my dad had passed away previously, but my mom paid for our wedding. So there were luxuries that came from that. But when I think back to having a dad that was an entrepreneur, I think about we were able to go on vacations because he set his schedule. And one of his favorite things to do, which I eventually caught on, was every trip at the end he'd be like, would you like to stay an extra day? And he always added on an extra day, and it always...
Stop it.
And he always acted like it was just like it just came to him, but it was his thing. So when I think when I think about growing up, I don't think about money. I don't think about... My dad ran his own business, so we could do whatever he wanted. I think about presence and time and what he was able to give to me in that area, the freedom. And so when I had kids, when I got pregnant, I was like... that's what I want. When I'm thinking about boundaries, I don't think about this is how much money I want to make and this is how many weddings I want to hit a year. I think this is what I want to do for my family first. And family first always, how can my business provide that for me? So I want presence in my kids' lives. I want to make money so that my husband and I are very like forward thinking, future thinking with money, like investments, retirement accounts, whatever the investment accounts are called for your kids' education. I don't remember what those are.
I can't think of it, but yeah.
Whatever they are. Life insurance, all of that stuff. We want to provide a future for our kids, and you have to work to do that. And unfortunately. And I want to be present in their life. So when I had them, it's not just me and my husband anymore, who also works. It's my babies. And right now they're not, I mean, they talk, but who knows what they're saying. One
of our babies started saying a word, and we're like, we can't figure it out.
Ours do that too. And they're looking at you like, do you not know what I'm saying?
Like, they started saying knack. Like, that's a snack.
Okay, interesting. Well, and that's when they're bigger and I want to, if we're on vacation and they're like, can we stay an extra day? It not be that we can't because of mommy has to work. So, and granted, like I said, you have to give yourself grace. I'm not skipping a wedding so that I can stay on vacation longer.
You're
but
providing
I want to set
commitment.
my life up so that I can be extremely present in my kids' lives. They have a hybrid mom of she owns her own business and she works from home.
Yeah.
And also provide for them financially. Having kids has changed everything for me.
Now, is it hard for you when the babies are at the house to like go into work mode?
No, I put my AirPods in.
I love it. I love it. Courtney, bless her heart, she, especially when the babies were like real little, she would, you know, we still have help at the house, but she would be like, oh, I'll work at the kitchen table. And then she would just end up like, the babies are like, Mah. So, she's like, what?
Yeah, you can't. My office is at the complete opposite end of the house
awesome.
from my baby's playroom. And I don't leave them in there by themselves, y'all, just so you know. We have help at home. I don't put my AirPods in and go to my office. We have help at home. So they are taken care of.
Yes.
I go to my office, and our help, it's family members of ours. And if they need me, they text me.
Yeah.
And I
just
immediately
like you're not
go
home,
in there. Right.
And that you can
But I
pop
pretend
in.
like I'm not home. But if there's an emergency,
You're there.
I've gotten a text many a time that says, we have a blowout that is going to be a 2-person job.
Jana,
I
you
need
are
your
needed
help.
in
Yes,
our
we need
playroom.
mommy right now. So and that's a perk of mine. I step away from the desk and I go, and it's
That's
always family
incredible.
first. So I don't have an issue with it because I've had to tell myself, you have to put your AirPods in, you have to listen to some podcasts while you work. They are taken care of.
And it's a blessing.
It's such a blessing to have in-home childcare. It's not free. But it's so much better than, I mean, can you imagine triplets in daycare? What that would cost?
Okay, Jana, let's talk about, we also have in-home childcare, and my babies still are sick all the time.
No, really. I feel like our babies have had like 2 illnesses, and I'm like, what are we doing that's working so well?
The first time that the boys got sick, I was like, it was the most mortifying thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the first time your baby's sick, they're just so helpless.
Yeah.
And anyway, they're sick pretty often. And I'm like, imagine if they were in daycare.
Yeah.
And just all around all the other ones. So it is such a big blessing. And like,
Huge.
I mean, for us to like, our nanny comes to our house and we just walk out the door.
Yeah.
And the boys' environment stay the same. And like, I
Exactly.
couldn't imagine like one time our childcare, our previous nanny, she had COVID and we had to take them to outside childcare, packing the diaper bag.
Oh, yeah.
Like we forgot everything.
Yeah.
Or one time I made it all the way past our office, which is like over 30 minutes from my house. I get there. Oh, there's no diaper bag. No diaper bag.
Yeah,
I was
kind
like,
of a
oh,
necessity.
Okay, like I need to work, but let me go drive a half hour to drive another half hour. So we're an hour and a half in.
Right.
Now I can go to work.
Yeah.
It is a
exactly.
blessing.
Yes.
It is a
for
blessing.
Sure.
But yeah, childcare and home childcare,
Yeah.
especially with multiples. Maybe if I had one, it would be like, people would be like, actually, it's a breeze. But
Right. With 3,
2.
it's, man, y'all should see us heading out the door to church on a Sunday morning.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's difficult. But yeah, it's having people come to our home to take care of our kids, but knowing I am a few steps away and can step in at any point. It's a huge blessing.
Less daunting.
Yes, exactly.
To take
yeah.
that reign of 3.
Exactly. Yeah, that's been a huge help.
gosh.
We've been very fortunate in
That's
that.
incredible.
Yeah.
So Jana, what's next? Like, you know, we both have established businesses. Like in the next 5 years, like, do you have anything like big you're wanting to do? Are you wanting to work even less? Are you gonna tell me like you plan to homeschool your kids yourself? Like,
Oh gosh. Somebody asked me that recently, and I was like, I don't want to think about school right now.
no, it's not the time. They're walking. They're just starting to walk.
Just barely. So I'm already at the pace that I planned for with kids. So like I said before, I was between 40 to 50 weddings a year, which was in that hustle phase. So that when I got to having kids, my max now is about 25. A little less than that if I can. But if it's like a dream couple, of course, I'll hit that 25 number if I really want it. So I'm there. 5 years from now, I would like for it to be closer to like 10 to 15.
No way.
And the goal is 10 years from now, I'm retired.
No way.
So, and that's the goal. And that's right now, that looks pretty achievable. And it's one of those things, if 10 years from now, because my kids will be in school then too. So
Right.
10 years from now, I'm like,
I'm bored.
what am I going to do with myself? Then I guess I'll
Isn't
keep
it so
going.
cool with your business? You just have that freedom.
Yeah, exactly. And a huge part of that, you do have to pre-plan, because
A lot of pre-planning.
you can't, I don't have a 401k through an employer. I have to do
Right.
my own retirement and do all of these things on my own. So I'm not just like, I just don't want to work anymore in 10 years.
Yeah.
You have to think those things through, but that's the awesome thing about running
Where
your
do
own
you
business.
get, like, I mean, if I can ask, because I find personal finance so fascinating.
Yeah.
Where do you get your personal finance knowledge? Because, like, one thing is a misconception, and, like, when you don't have money, the thought of managing money is, like, actually really easy.
Yeah.
But then when you get money, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to manage this. I have to steward this.
Right.
Where did you get your financial literacy?
So my parents I got an allowance starting when I was really young. I think initially it was like $1. It eventually went to $5 a week, maybe 10 a week later. But it was, I know, like rolling in the dough. I would be given that money, and immediately tithe had to come out of it. And 10% went to tithe and 10% went to savings. And that was from the time I was very, very small. And my parents didn't do that to give me money. I wasn't buying anything. I didn't know, I wasn't.
Your needs were met.
Exactly. But it was to teach me that.
Yeah.
And so for me, that has always been 10% of every dollar I made always went to tithe. 10% always went in my savings account, minimum. Amazing. And so that was taught to me. My parents were very good with money, good with finances, good with managing that. And a part of that was my dad ran his own business, and you have to figure out things like that with money. Yeah. And my mom ran our finances in the house, taught me how to do that. I run the finances in our house. We've just always been pretty strict with that. And so it was something I was taught, something that my husband and I, we came into it with different mindsets on money, because he was a spender when we got married. And I was like, we can't do that. So but we got our heads together and figured out how to make it work. And what's always been a priority to me is living well now, but not above our means. Yeah. We live below our means so that we can provide for our future. And I know people are like, well, if you save too much for the future, what if you died tomorrow? Then my kids will be taken care of.
Great.
And what more could you want than that? I don't need a luxurious life right now when I'm very content with where I am right now.
Yeah.
So
I love it. I love it. It's so fun to, like, think that, your business can give you options, right?
For sure.
You have more options than you would normally have on, like, a track that somebody else gives you. So for anyone that's wanting to, like, get started in their business, like, do you have, like, any advice? Like, what would you say to someone that just wanted to start a creative business? Like, what was the biggest hurdle that you had to overcome?
I think one thing I had to overcome was this thought of, well, my business could fail at any time, and then what's going to happen to me? If you're in a job with a boss, you can get fired at any time. So if you bet on yourself, stuff can happen. I mean, I work in the wedding industry, and we had a pandemic.
You went through COVID.
Yeah. That hits the wedding industry really hard. And there were businesses that didn't make it out of that, truly. Yeah. And so you have to bet on yourself. You have to know that you're going to give it a shot. Don't live your life to work for your business. Your business should work for you. You're not putting your whole life into your work. That's not sustainable anyway.
No.
But go for it. I mean, you don't know until you try. My parents, and again, I had a dad who owned his own business, but when I told my parents I wanted to do this for myself, they never said, no, you should really work for someone else, all that stuff. My dad said, when you get your first $1 million, buy me a Mustang. So, and
I love it.
They just always, they were like, okay, when I told my mom, I said, I think I'm ready to quit my day job and take this full time. She said, okay, great. Just let me know when it happens. And you need that confidence in yourself. That was instilled into me. Have confidence in yourself. If you have something, a passion for something, and you want to turn it into a business, figure out what you're going to have to do to make that work. It may take longer than you want, and that's okay. That's okay.
I was thinking about that. It took me 4 businesses and 7 years to find something that would really take off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, actually create profit. Like, because there is difference. Like, being self-employed and making money is different than running a business that brings in profit.
Exactly.
Because when you have profit, that's when you get to think about retirement.
Right.
there was many years in my business. I mean, I didn't even think I made enough to pay taxes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't
Yeah.
even make any money. Like, it's all expense. Like,
Yeah.
what a fun time doing taxes.
Right.
But then when you find the thing, like, what's so fascinating to me, I don't know, did you do any work before just like diving into wedding? Like, did you have any side hustle? Like, I know you were still at college.
So when I first started, it was mostly like family senior sessions, stuff like that. And then it eventually turned into heavily weddings. But this was my side hustle for several years, and it's the only side hustle I ever
amazing.
had. This has just been my passion from like the
Well,
get-go.
I had like multiple. Like, I had multiple, and always looking back, the one thought that I kind of like, I don't know how to say it. Like, I didn't realize they were failures.
Yeah.
I just was like, oh, that didn't work for me.
Yeah.
On to the next. Like,
Right.
oh, you know what? This isn't vibing with me. Like, on to the next. Like, I never thought like, oh, I failed again. I failed again. Like, it never was the thought.
Yeah.
Like, looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that was definitely not like my best bet work.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
like that actually didn't work out for my reasons, like whatever. But it never was. I never framed it as like, oh, I failed. It was
Right,
like, oh,
exactly.
I learned this, and now I get to apply it. And what's cool for everyone listening that is maybe have had a failed business, all our skills compound.
Yeah.
Like, all the skills that we're picking up along the way are go compound into the business you run now. Like,
Exactly.
I have so many different skills from my past career.
You're always
paths
taking
that-
it with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And you don't realize how successful you are until you think back about, like you were saying with taxes, like my first few years where it was a side hustle and I was charging like $25 for a shoot for friends for
I
like
would
a
love to
family
see those
shoot. Oh my
pictures.
gosh, no, absolutely not. Thank you to all of those people that
God
trusted me
bless
then.
them.
Yes. But, and like turning that into my accountant and her being like, okay, you know, this is how much you brought, you know, your little hobby and stuff like that. And then the first year that I made 6 figures.
Yeah.
And being like, oh, okay. All right.
All
yeah.
right.
When I was so excited before, I didn't even realize what I could get to. And that is wherever you are at is so valuable because of what you're learning along the way. But yeah, it doesn't hit you until later. And then you're like, I wasn't exactly where I wanted to get then. I knew where I was headed.
Yeah.
I knew I would get there.
You knew
But man, I was so proud of those little $20, $25 shoots. And then, but like you said, it compounds and you learn every shoot. I learned more and more, grew more and more. Got to the point where it's like it's an actual business where I'm paying taxes in the year.
It was just tax season, everybody.
Yeah, it was. So it hurts.
It does. It doesn't. It gets different. I had to this is funny. I had to like reframe my thinking. I used to be so upset paying taxes, and now I'm like, Lord, thank you so much for allowing me to pay in for my roads.
Yes.
And all these other things that I
Yes.
don't understand
Yes,
or
Lord.
maybe like not agree with. Who cares?
Right.
Like, I'm just paying it in,
Yeah.
and America, like, I'm just so blessed to be here.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Well, how fortunate are we that we are making money and can provide for our families and
Yes.
paying taxes? It's the inevitable, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So as long as you and plan for it and prep for it and you're not, you know, there's no sticker shock when
Right.
you find out how much you're going to pay in. But it's a blessing. It's an awesome thing that I can work for myself, set my own hours, make money, paying taxes at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But still.
But it allows us to, like, I think about that first year that because I was the sticker shock person, like my first year that I really did pretty well in profit. And I was like, you know, I had like options of like, you know, do you try to like spend all of your profit and like make it look like you didn't make anything? I was like, that just doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
So I paid the taxes. And then like the next year I was like, oh, like I would like to look and see if I could like invest in real estate, like buy my first house.
Yeah.
And because I did the hard thing, which was let go of that short-term money, like that is what gives you the stability. And, you know,
Right.
you have to have like 2 years of like good tax returns to
Yeah.
afford a house. And I was like,
Exactly.
oh my gosh, thank you, past Tanner. Like,
Yeah.
you bought me a house. Like,
Exactly. Exactly. You got to think about it
works out.
positively.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is so good. So Jana, where can they find you in case they're looking? What
Yes.
area do you service?
Mostly East Tennessee, sometimes Middle Tennessee. I do travel a little bit. It kind of depends. And it also depends on the time of year, stuff like that.
course.
But really, if you're anywhere in the U.S. and you are interested, you can find me Instagram and TikTok, Jana Beery Photo. I'm going to spell it
Please do.
JAYNABIERY PHOTO because I have a crazy
It will be
first
linked.
and last name.
It will be linked
Thank
for
you.
everyone. Do not worry.
Yes.
Y'all will love following Jana on the IG, on the Instagram.
Thank you.
I love following your Instagram.
Thank
and I'm
you.
not even like in the
You'll
wedding
find
industry.
triplets on there too if you're interested.
Yeah, follow her for her
Yeah.
triplets because they're precious.
Exactly. Oh, and my website is janabeeryphotography.com.
We'll link all
So,
3 of these.
yes.
Jana's on the TikTok. I see it in my For You, I see it in my For You and my following. feed.
Nice.
Yeah,
I like
love
the
it.
TikTok. I've got 2 weddings next year from TikTok. And
Really?
I was late on the TikTok train. I kept saying, I'm way too old for that. I'm not doing it, not doing it. Did it a few months ago, gave into it.
I see your posts. Like, you're
and then-
showing up.
Well, thank you. And then now I've got 2 weddings next year for it.
No
So,
way.
Yeah.
So you're pro TikTok.
I'm pro TikTok, which they're about
Love
to
it.
take it away. So we'll see what happens then. But yeah, pro TikTok. I
Oh
put
my
my stuff on
gosh.
Pinterest,
Yeah.
Instagram, everywhere. You got to get all over all of the socials.
Okay, departing question. Where do people find you the most?
So word of mouth and Instagram are my 2 main
Ooh,
things.
so you're
And-
not having to spend a lot of money
No,
to
I
build
don't-
this business.
I don't pay for any marketing.
Praise God.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome.
Yeah,
you
so-
just show up,
Exactly.
you do your best work,
Yeah.
people
And
bring you business.
word of mouth is the number 1 with past clients, sending me referrals, or number 2 would be like vendors. I'm on a lot of vendor referral lists, but then
Yeah.
after that, Instagram. So yeah, I
incredible.
love Instagram.
Oh, Jana, thank you so much for your time
Thank
today
you
and
so
coming on to the
much.
Makers Gonna Learn Unfiltered
Yes.
podcast. Until the next episode, we'll see you guys later. Bye. Thank you guys so much for watching a Makers Gonna Learn Unfiltered podcast. This has been such a fun time getting to hang out with you, and I want to make sure to let you guys know you can actually watch this podcast wherever you love to watch podcasts. So whether you want to consume it on Apple, Spotify, YouTube with an audio video podcast, we got you covered. And I want to say thank you for hanging out with us today for another episode. If you guys have any questions, be sure to let us know down below. We are always constantly looking for podcast ideas. So if you have a topic you think we should cover that me or the team would love, drop it down below. If you need anything, reach out to hi@makersgonnalearn.com. And if you have not joined our amazing crafting community, check out makersgonnalearn.com. I will leave you an amazing offer right down below to get you plugged in and get started today. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.